Hi everybody, it's Papa Pete. I want to talk to you. I want to tell you a story. It's a true story. I have notes because I want to get it right. This is a story about Howard, a pharmacist in Kentucky. And one night, he came home from work, he was tired, he was overwhelmed, and he was frustrated. So instead of going straight into the house, he took a seat in his yard, and on a tree swing. The reason he was tired and frustrated and overwhelmed is Howard's mother had Alzheimer's. She was in a nursing home and she no longer recognized her son. Howard had two sons. One son had just broken his ankle in a million places, and to add to that tragedy, he was a football player in high school and that was his whole life. And then Howard's other son struggled with addiction and actually was in jail, and Howard had taken a tough love decision to not bail him out this time. So he was really feeling overwhelmed. And at one point he looked up at the sky and he said, "I really need to know that you are hearing my prayers." And then he said, "I don't need my will done, I just need to know that you hear me, God." And after a few awkward moments, he kind of felt a little bit of self-loathing and a little embarrassed for himself. And he got up and he went inside the house. Next day was Sunday, and driving home from church, for some strange reason, absent-mindedly, he missed a turn for home. And it started raining. In fact, it was downpouring. And he's thinking to himself, why did I do that? How did that happen? I go the same way home from church every Sunday. He passes a McDonald's, he passes a Rite Aid. He's getting ready to make the next right turn to recover and go home. And he sees a man walking along the side of the road, soaking wet, with a car battery on his shoulder. And Howard says to himself, how many poor slobs have passed this guy without stopping to help him out? And then Howard realizes, oh, I'm one of those poor slobs, I didn't stop. He turns around, pulls up to the man, opens his passenger door, and lets him in. He's a big guy, about 6 feet, and he said to him that his car stalled down the hill, he coasted into the McDonald's, and he pulled the battery out, trying to find an auto parts store to maybe test the battery or replace it. He's Hispanic. So Howard's friend in town is Wayne, and Wayne owns an auto parts store that just started opening up on Sundays because of competition, and that Sunday was the first day he was open. So he took his new friend with the battery to the auto parts store, and they put the battery on a charger to see if it would charge. And his new friend said, can you just maybe give me a ride back to McDonald's so I can tell my fellow travelers what's going on? Howard said, sure. On the way back, Howard says, where are you from? He says, Atlanta. Now they're in Kentucky. Howard says, what are you doing here? And the man says, I brought an older lady and her husband from California after I picked her up at the airport in Atlanta. Howard says, so a lady from California flew to Atlanta so you could drive them to Kentucky? Yes. Why? Howard asks. The guy pauses, and then he says, he looks at him in the car and he says, do you believe in signs and wonders? And Howard says, okay. So, the story is, there's a church in Los Angeles, has a prayer service every Wednesday. The same night, that Wednesday, that Howard sat in his tree swing in his yard and yelled at God. At this prayer service on that Wednesday, there's a very respected, wise, and spiritual older woman who was moved by the Holy Spirit. She had a vision. Her vision was of a black-haired woman sitting by a fountain praying for her sons. Even though she spoke no English, 2 words appeared to her in this vision: Kentucky and Dan. Kentucky and Dan. Everybody in the church respected and loved this woman for her spirituality, and they trusted her vision. So they raised money. They took a collection and gave her husband the money so they could fly to Atlanta and drive to Kentucky. And the only thing they needed was this man who Howard picked up, who agreed to drive them as long as he could get back to Atlanta by Sunday night so he could get back to work. So, the man drove them to Kentucky, and they thought about Dan, so they went to Danville, Kentucky. No luck finding the black-haired woman in her vision. The next Sunday was Sunday, and they knew that there was a Danville Avenue in the town they were in, so they drove down Danville Avenue looking for the black-haired woman. No luck. They decided it was time to go home. So that's when his car died by McDonald's. And he went down the hill, and that's when he was walking with the battery in the rain, and he said, I prayed to God to show me a sign. Show me you're listening to my prayers. And that's when Howard pulled up. So they drove over to Howard's house after they, and the man said, why are we turning here? And Howard said, probably because I'm crazy. So they go to Howard's house, they pick up Howard's wife. His wife is a little confused, but she goes along, and they go back to McDonald's. When they go to the McDonald's, the older spiritual woman on her quest smiled because she saw Howard pull up with her friend in the car, and she realized someone had been kind. And then, when Howard's wife gets out of the car, the older spiritual woman gasps and points at Howard's wife, the woman with black hair from her vision. So Howard and his wife take everybody to their house, they cook them some food, and Howard takes the man back to the auto parts store to check on the battery, see how it's going. Meanwhile, the older spiritual woman sees Howard's pool in their backyard and their fountain, the ones from the vision. She wanted to meet the older son in jail. Guess what? The only visitation day is Sunday. It's Sunday. So they go to the visitation room in the jail, you know, that place where visitors can see. There's little cubicles separated by thick glass, and you have to use a telephone. So they get Howard's son on the visit, and the woman's husband translates, and she's looking right at Howard's son, and she speaks to him directly, and he said that God sent her to tell him that he must take responsibility for his own life and allow God to direct his path. During the conversation, all the other visitors stopped what they were doing, and they were all listening and watching the spiritual woman talk to Howard's son. Son has been sober and clean for 15 years. God took away his compulsion. So they go back to Howard's house. The younger son with the broken ankle is home, and the spiritual woman gets everybody to make a circle around the son and prays for him. She says, pain is something we must endure, but God helps us to endure it. It took 2 years, but that son healed. He never missed a football game. So we've covered Kentucky and the black-haired woman and the vision. What about Dan? Howard's wife's father's name was Dan, and he accepted Christ into his life right before he died. But Howard's wife always had doubts about whether he was safe in heaven or not. And the spiritual woman's visit was a sign that her father was okay, and he was home. True story. True story. Follow the path of kindness. Always. There is always much more going on than meets the eye. God is always at work. I know some of you have been burdened with a heavy load and a heavy loss, and you're going through some things even this weekend. I want you to know you are never far away from truth and beauty and love. It is one of the greatest mysteries we will ever face when we face someone who has completed suicide. If you know of anyone who's struggling or having trouble, the best thing to do is to talk about it. You don't have to know the right things to say. Just talk about it. Suicide gains power when we're quiet, when we deny. There are always resources. There are always people. You can come talk to me, another trusted loved one, adult. But no matter how far down people get, you can always find the courage to look them in the eye and tell them, don't leave. They'll know what you mean when you say it. There is always a place to find truth, beauty, and love and faith. Follow the path of kindness and know always that God is at work, especially in times like these and days like these. We miss you terribly. We can't wait until we can get together again. But in the meantime, you have my phone number. You know where to find me. I would love to talk. God bless you all.